October 17th, 1991. Aero 6:23 hours. Operations Center, NSA Headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. Dr. Eleanor Marshall stood in the secure conference room, holding a transcript she'd read 3 times. The paper trembled slightly in her hands, not from fear, but from something closer to rage. "Read it again," said Captain Robert Chen, NSA's liaison to submarine cable operations. He'd been called in before dawn, still wearing yesterday's shirt. Marshall cleared her throat. "Admiral Vladimir Chernovin, Commander-in-Chief of the Soviet Navy, press conference in Moscow yesterday, 1400 hours local. Quote, the transition to fiber optic communications represents an impenetrable barrier to Western intelligence collection. Unlike copper cables which emit electromagnetic radiation, fiber optics transmit only light through glass. No signal escapes the shielding. The American submarine cable tapping operations are now obsolete." End quote. The room went silent except for the hum of air conditioning. Chen leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. For 20 years, American submarines had been tapping Soviet undersea cables, copper lines that carried military communications across the Sea of Okhotsk, the Barents Sea, every maritime choke point where Soviet fleets operated. The operation, codenamed Ivy Bells, had delivered intelligence so valuable that presidents received daily briefings from cables pulled from the ocean floor. Now Chernovin was saying that era was over. "He's not wrong about the physics," said Dr. James Wyckoff, chief of NSA's Advanced Technology Division. He stood at the window watching the Maryland dawn break across the massive parking lots. "Fiber optics don't leak electromagnetic radiation. You can't use induction coils like we did with copper. The signal is photons traveling through glass at the speed of light, completely contained within the cable shielding." "So he wins." Marshall's voice had an edge that made everyone turn. "I didn't say that," Wyckoff replied quietly. Chen stood up, pacing the length of the conference room. You could see him calculating, not just the technical challenge, but the geopolitical implications. Soviet military communications going dark, submarine movements invisible, fleet deployments untrackable, 20 years of intelligence advantage evaporating like morning fog. "How long until the Soviets complete their fiber transition?" he asked. "Intelligence assessment says 18 months, Marshall replied. "They're installing new cables in the Barents Sea now, Kola Peninsula to Vladivostok by mid-93. After that, every copper line gets replaced." 18 months, Chen repeated. He looked at Wyckoff. "Can we beat that timeline?" "Beat it how? We don't have a solution. We don't even have a theory for how to tap fiber optics without cutting into the cable. And if we cut it, they'll know immediately. Fiber breaks trigger automatic alarms. We'd get maybe 60 seconds of access before they shut down the line." Marshall set down the transcript with careful precision. "Admiral Chernovin just told the entire world that American intelligence can't touch his new cables. He didn't brief it to his own Navy. He didn't whisper it in classified channels. He announced it at a press conference." "Your point?" "My point is he's taunting us." Her eyes had gone cold. "And I don't like being taunted." Wyckoff turned from the window. "Even if we wanted to solve this, and I'm not saying it's solvable, we'd need time. Years, probably. Fundamental research into fiber optic signal detection, materials science, electromagnetic theory. We're talking about detecting photons that are deliberately contained inside shielding, designed to prevent exactly that." Chen checked his watch. 0631. In 3 hours, he'd have to brief the deputy director. In 6 hours, someone would brief the national security advisor. By tonight, this would be on the president's desk. "What if we didn't have years?" he asked quietly. Wyckoff laughed, but it died when he saw Chen's expression. "You're serious." Chernovin made his announcement yesterday. It'll be in every intelligence summary NATO countries receive by end of business today. By next week, every Soviet cable engineer will believe they're working on an untappable system. They'll get confident, maybe careless. "You want to prove him wrong," Marshall said. It wasn't a question. "I want to make him regret his press conference." Wyckoff shook his head slowly. "Rob, This isn't like optimizing an existing system. We're talking about physics that says this shouldn't be possible. I'd need a team. I'd need lab time. I'd need… How long? What? If I get you everything you need, full access to every lab in this building, every engineer, every piece of equipment, how long until you know if it's even theoretically possible? Wyckoff stared at him. You're talking about dropping every other project, reassigning dozens of people, burning favors with every technical division. 72 hours, Chen said. That's what I can give you before questions start coming from above about resource allocation. 3 days to tell me if Chernovin is right. And if he is, then we confirm it and move on. Chen's jaw tightened. But if he's wrong, if there's even a chance he's wrong, I want to be the one who proves it. Marshall was already standing, gathering the transcripts. Where do we start? Wyckoff looked between them. The Navy captain who'd spent 2 decades running submarine intelligence operations, and the physicist who'd helped design the original copper cable induction taps. Both of them watching him with expressions that said the next 72 hours would determine whether American undersea intelligence survived or died. He made his decision in the space between heartbeats. We start by forgetting everything we know about tapping cables, Wyckoff said quietly. Because Chernovin is right about one thing. The old methods won't work. If we're going to beat this, we need to invent something that doesn't exist yet. The morning sun finally cleared the horizon, flooding the conference room with light. Somewhere in the Barents Sea, Soviet engineers were installing fiber optic cables they believed were absolutely secure. They had no idea the clock had just started running. Hour 6, 12:30 hours, Lab 3, NSA Advanced Technology Division. The conference table was covered in cable cross-sections, fiber optic lines sliced open like autopsies, their internal structure exposed under harsh fluorescent light. Wyckoff stood over them with a jeweler's loupe, examining the layers of shielding that made Chernovin so confident. Talk me through it again, Marshall said. She was at the whiteboard, marker in hand, equations already filling half the surface. Wyckoff pointed to the dissected cable. Outer layer is polyethylene sheathing, waterproof, pressure-resistant. Beneath that, steel armor wires for physical protection, then copper shielding for electromagnetic interference protection. Ironic, since there's no electromagnetic signal to protect. Inside that, another layer of polyethylene, then the fiber bundle itself. And the fibers? Hair-thin glass strands. Signal is light pulses, photons traveling through the core at 200,000 kilometers per second. Total internal reflection keeps the light contained. No leakage, no radiation, nothing escapes the glass. Marshall wrote on the board. Problem: detect photons without breaking containment. Every fiber optic tap ever developed requires physical access, Wyckoff continued. You either cut the cable and splice in a beam splitter, or you bend the fiber enough to break total internal reflection and leak light. Both methods are detectable. The Soviets would know within seconds. Dr. Richard Park entered carrying a stack of research papers, his security badge still swinging from the sprint across the building. I pulled everything we have on non-invasive optical detection. It's not encouraging. Show me, Chen said. He'd been silent for the past hour, watching the scientists work. Park spread the papers across the table. The fundamental issue is that photons inside fiber optic cable don't interact with anything outside the cable. They're trapped in the glass by physics. Even if you wrapped the most sensitive photodetector around the cable, you'd read zero. Nothing. The shielding isn't just blocking the signal. There's no signal to block. So Chernovin was right. Marshall's voice was flat. About traditional detection methods, yes. Park hesitated. But there's something I found. Probably nothing, but… Everyone turned to look at him. He pulled out a technical journal from 1987, pages marked with yellow tabs. Research paper from Bell Labs. They were studying electromagnetic interference in fiber optic cables. Most of it confirms what we already know. Fiber doesn't emit EM radiation. But there's a footnote. Page 47. Wyckoff took the journal, flipping to the marked page. His eyes narrowed as he read. What? Chen asked. They found anomalous electromagnetic signatures near high-power fiber optic transmitters. Very faint. At the limits of their detection equipment. They attributed it to power supplies and dismissed it as noise. Marshall moved closer. What if it wasn't noise? It would have to be impossibly faint, Park said. We're talking about detecting electromagnetic echoes from photons that aren't supposed to create electromagnetic fields. The signal-to-noise ratio would be… He grabbed a calculator, fingers flying. 10 million to 1, maybe worse. But it exists, Marshall pressed. There's something to detect. Wyckoff set down the journal carefully, as if it might explode. Even if this is real, and that's a massive if, we'd need detection equipment sensitive enough to pick up a whisper in a hurricane, at the bottom of the ocean, through cable shielding, while a nuclear submarine sits nearby creating its own electromagnetic interference. How sensitive are we talking? Chen asked. Park did more calculations. We'd need to detect magnetic field variations at the femtotesla level. That's 10 to the minus 15 teslas. For reference, the Earth's magnetic field is about 50 microteslas. We'd be looking for a signal 1 billion times weaker than the background noise. The room went quiet. You could hear the ventilation system, the distant hum of computers, someone walking down the hallway outside. Has anyone ever built a detector that's sensitive? Marshall asked quietly. For laboratory conditions, yes, Wyckoff replied. Squid magnetometers can achieve that sensitivity. Superconducting quantum interference devices. But they require liquid helium cooling, vibration isolation, electromagnetic shielding from all external noise. You can't just drop one in the ocean. Chen walked to the window. Outside, normal people were going to lunch, worrying about normal problems. None of them knew that in this room, 3 scientists were trying to violate the laws of physics in 72 hours. What if we could? He said, without turning around. Could what? Build a squid magnetometer that works underwater, on a cable, in operational conditions. Wyckoff started to laugh, then stopped when he realized Chen was serious. That's not engineering, that's science fiction. The technical challenges alone… I didn't ask if it was easy, Chen interrupted. I asked if it was possible. Park and Marshall exchanged glances. Wyckoff ran his hand through his hair, looking at the equations on the whiteboard, the dissected cables, the research papers suggesting something that shouldn't exist. Theoretically, he said slowly, if you could solve the cooling problem, the vibration isolation, the electromagnetic shielding, the signal processing, and about 15 other things that have never been done before, theoretically you might detect electromagnetic echoes from fiber optic transmissions. How long to build a prototype? In normal circumstances, 2 years, maybe 3. We don't have 3 years, Chen said quietly. We have 66 hours. Marshall capped her marker. Then we'd better stop talking about why it's impossible and start figuring out how to do it anyway. She turned back to the whiteboard and began writing. Approach, superconducting detection, plus adaptive noise cancellation, plus real-time signal processing. Park stared at the board. You're serious. You actually think we can… Admiral Chernavin thinks we can't, Marshall cut him off. That's reason enough to try. Wyckoff looked at Chen. If we do this, if we actually pull this off, we're talking about technology that doesn't just tap fiber optic cables. We're talking about detection capabilities that could revolutionize signals intelligence. This would be classified beyond anything that currently exists, Chen finished. I know. Who else are we bringing in? Everyone. Chen checked his watch. I'm pulling every engineer, every physicist, every technician in this building who might contribute. You'll have materials, scientists, cryogenic specialists, signal processing experts. Wyckoff, you run the technical side. Marshall, you handle theoretical framework. Park, you coordinate between teams. And you? Marshall asked. I keep the rest of NSA from asking questions for the next 66 hours. Chen moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. This stays in this building. No outside contractors, no academic consultations. If Chernovin gets even a hint that we're working on this. He didn't need to finish. They all understood. The Soviets would change their deployment timeline, add additional security, maybe abandon fiber optics entirely until they understood the threat. Wyckoff nodded slowly. 66 hours to invent a technology that shouldn't exist. 65 now, Chen corrected, and left the room. Marshall turned back to the whiteboard, marker moving in swift strokes. Park began sorting research papers into categories. Wyckoff picked up the phone to start calling in every favor he'd accumulated in 20 years at NSA. None of them said what they were all thinking, that Chernovin was probably right, that this was impossible, that they were about to waste 3 days chasing a ghost, but they'd know for certain in 65 hours, and if there was even a chance, even the slimmest possibility, that an untappable cable didn't exist. Then, Admiral Chernovin was about to learn a very expensive lesson about challenging American intelligence engineers. Hour 48, October 19th, 0200 hours, Lab 3. Wyckoff's hands were shaking as he attached the prototype to the test cable. Not from exhaustion, though he hadn't slept in 2 days. From the sudden, terrible realization that it might actually work. Signal processing is online, Marshall reported from the console. Her voice was hoarse from hours of running equations. Noise cancellation algorithms are adaptive. We're filtering out everything except the target frequency band. The device looked like nothing that should exist. A cylinder of exotic alloys wrapped around a fiber optic cable. Liquid helium flowing through microchannels to maintain superconducting temperatures. Squid sensors so sensitive they could detect a human heartbeat from across the room. Park initiated the test sequence. Transmitting data through the fiber, standard encrypted military communications protocol, same specs as Soviet cables. The console lit up with cascading data. For 5 seconds, nothing happened, just noise, random fluctuations, the background chaos of electromagnetic reality. Then Marshall's screen changed. "I've got something," she whispered. "Electromagnetic resonance at 1.2 femtoteslas. It's coherent. Oh my God, it's modulated." Wyckoff moved to her station. The signal was impossibly faint, a ghost of a whisper buried in thunderous noise. But the processing algorithms were pulling it out, enhancing it, revealing structure where there should be only chaos. "Can you decode it?" Chen had materialized beside them, summoned by some sixth sense that the impossible was becoming possible. Marshall's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Running it through decryption. The signal quality is terrible, but if we can boost the gain..." She stopped, stared at her screen. "What?" She turned the monitor so they could all see. Text was appearing, letter by letter, extracted from electromagnetic echoes that shouldn't exist. Test message, November. Alpha Sierra Alpha. Success. The lab went silent. "We just read data from a fiber optic cable," Park said slowly, "without breaking the shielding, without triggering any alarms, without the cable knowing it was compromised." Wyckoff pulled off his glasses, cleaning them with hands that still trembled. "Chernovin said it was impossible." "Chernovin," Chen replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "was wrong." Hour 72. October 20th, 06:23 hours. The same conference room where it started. Chen laid the technical report on the table in front of the deputy director. The prototype sat beside it, elegant and deadly, the kind of technology that changes the balance of power. "It works?" the deputy director asked. "It works," Chen confirmed. "We can detect fiber optic transmissions without physical penetration. The Soviets will never know we're listening." "How soon can we deploy?" "USS Jimmy Carter is being retrofitted for special operations. We can have operational systems installed within 6 months. After that..." Chen paused. "After that, Every fiber optic cable the Soviets install becomes an open microphone. The deputy director picked up the prototype, feeling its weight. Admiral Chernovin's Untappable cables. Aren't, Marshall finished. Outside, the sun was rising on the 72nd hour. Somewhere in the Barents Sea, Soviet engineers were installing fiber optic cables with absolute confidence in their security. They would keep that confidence for years, never knowing that American submarines were listening to every word. The technology would remain classified for decades. USS Jimmy Carter would conduct cable-tapping missions into the 21st century, collecting intelligence that shaped American policy through the end of the Cold War and beyond. And Admiral Vladimir Chernovin would never know that his public challenge had been accepted, met, and decisively answered in 72 hours by engineers who refused to accept that impossible meant anything more than, "We haven't figured it out yet." Chen looked at his team, exhausted, triumphant, already thinking about the next impossible problem. "Good work," he said quietly. Marshall smiled. "We should send Chernovin a thank you card." "For what?" "For telling us it couldn't be done." She gestured at the prototype. Nothing motivates engineers quite like being told something is impossible. The device sat on the conference table, humming softly with liquid helium coolant, containing secrets that would remain classified for generations. The Soviets had built untappable cables. The NSA had tapped them anyway, and the ocean floor would never tell.